What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights Live, and today we're coming at you with not too much time to spare, guys. We got fights coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so who better to break down these fights with than the king of the NRFI himself, my brother, returning to the show once again. Wizz, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. Ready to break these fights down with you guys and a short morning. So let's get this going.
I love it. My man's popping in from the West Coast. We get that West Coast perspective. How about the Great White North up in Canada? Our boy Gordo Gamble's killing it. How you doing, brother?
Oh, we're doing good. Nothing like fights on a nice snowy morning here, Saturday morning. We'll take it any day of the week. So happy to break down these fights. Look forward to hearing your perspectives on them, and let's make some money.
Absolutely, boys. There we have it. Without further ado, guys, we'll start like we always do. In the very first fight of the night, we got Natalia Silva taking on Teresa Bleda. And guys, I'll just own the, somebody said in my comments the other day, I talk about the bets that I win. I talk about all the bets, right? I took a faceplant L trying to fade Teresa Bleda just a little bit on the Contender Series. And I just took a couple small shots on her opponent to win the fight by sub and to win the fight by knockout, just because felt like she had a little bit of susceptibility on the feet. I saw her get dropped on her regional tape, but she's 20 years old, guys. And she's really very young in her career. She's training with very high-level professionals from the looks of it. She's from the Czech Republic, same market as Yuri. Seems like they've had some connection as well in terms of their training. So Teresa Bleda seems like she's a prospect on the rise at 20 years old. A lot to like about her game coming into the UFC. That being said, she's taking on Natalia Silva. I said on this show, I thought Natalia Silva was a live underdog. I'm an idiot, so I didn't bet on her. And then now she goes from being a plus 200 underdog to being a minus 175 favorite. So you understand that the market is now hip to the fact Natalia Silva has real skills. She came in at 25 as a bit of an unknown commodity. Now we know that she can at least go at the UFC level. But is she deserving of this huge favorite distinction against somebody who's going to be physically more imposing than her, against somebody a little bit bigger? That I'm not sure about. So I think it's a dog or pass situation. I think it's a little bit of a market overreaction, but I think that Silva's the more skilled fighter. Most of the time, skills pay the bills. Maybe she's a minus 125, minus 135 here, but I think that physicality in women's MMA plays a huge role, as you guys know. And I just think that Bleda looks like, she could be the most physical person she's ever fought in her career. So Silva has her own muscles. She's not small by any means. She's not weak, but I do think she might get bullied around by the bigger, more physical athlete here. So give me Teresa Bleda by split decision. That's my prediction. Wiz, what do you like?
A lot of the times in these fights, you're going to hear me talking about reach advantages and height advantages here on this card specifically. Teresa Bleda has a 5-inch height advantage and then a 6-inch reach advantage, which is going to play a huge part just being more physical than Natalia Silva she already is, along with those advantages that she has in the limbs. It's going to be very tough for Natalia Silva to be able to get close. Now, striking realm, I favor Silva night and day, but I do expect Teresa Bleda to try and get this to the ground, get her ground and pound off, and squeak out a decision, and the dog rolls here.
Word to that. So this is one that I haven't placed a single bet on this card yet, guys. I have been considering placing a bet on Bleda all week. So this is one that, if my man Gordo talks me off it, maybe I just let this one roll. But I'm leaning towards making Bleda an official play for me.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to make it 3 towards the dog here. I played Bleda earlier in the week. I do think this is one of those spots where you're getting, I think you said market overcorrection. I think that's a great word here because it's recency bias, really. The same reasons why Silva was an underdog last time out is what Bleda excels at. And I think that when we look at this line, especially the way it opened with Bleda being a much bigger underdog, it's just a bit too wide because I do think Bleda has the physicality and the wrestling skills and the game plan to go out there and cause problems for someone in Silva. Sure, she looked good last time against Judavicius, but I think it's a completely different beast here. Young prospect on the rise. I think the line's too wide, and for that reason, I got a couple of units on Teresa Bleda myself. I think just quickly here, DraftKings perspective-wise, Bleda's got slate-breaking potential. I mean, 7.3, huge takedown upside, ground and pound upside. I know Narco's talking about that KO. Don't mind it. I think that she has a lot of upside in this spot for a slate like this with some big favorites. I don't mind Bleda as a dog with some good upside as well.
I absolutely love where your head's at. So it seems like we're all in on the Teresa Bleda side in terms of the panel. We prefer the underdog for the first fight of the night. The other thing I'll mention just on the way out, I was big on Natalia Silva in terms of her potential, in terms of I thought, she's been away 2 years, she could make improvements. But the crux of my argument was Jasmine Jasuda-Vicious, it's not very good. This is a different story because I think this is the kind of fight where both these women are talented, both these women are credible. Minus 110 apiece makes a little bit more sense to me. I just think both these women will succeed in the UFC, get more wins moving forward. Now, guys, next fight on the card, Brady Hiestand is back, and he's taking on Fernie Garcia. Fernie really was a little bit of a letdown in his last fight. I think a lot of people were pegging him to beat Journey Newson. I bet Journey in that spot. Did think that was a good opportunity for Journey, more UFC experience. If he doesn't get caught in the early going, tends to have much more competitive fights. And that was not really a good fight. It was pretty much a stinker on both ends. I didn't think either guy lit it up, but Fernie just decided he was going to, try and outshoot him from the outside, didn't throw a lot of volume and got taken down several times. I think it cost him the fight. I don't see why he wouldn't get taken down in this spot. To his credit, he works back up to his feet. He doesn't stay content on the ground. He gets back up. I think that's going to give a lot of opportunities for Brady to take him back down. I also think that Journey was really trying to control him on the ground and failing, right? I don't think Journey's very natural at that. I think he has a jiu-jitsu background. I just don't think he's, a UFC level world-class jiu-jitsu guy or anything like that. But when Brady takes this guy to the ground, he's a sick jiu-jitsu practitioner. He practices in the gi, out of the gi. I think he's got a lot more depth to his skill set on the ground. So wouldn't be surprised if he was able to get a back take, if he was able to get to a dominant position, ride it out from there. So I prefer the Brady Hiestand side here. I think he's got more grappling upside, but not sold on his defense. Not particularly sold on his cardio. And the biggest problem for me with backing him at chalk here is just that he's coming off that knee surgery. I think that he should look fine. He probably looks improved, if anything, but it's yet to be seen. It's a little bit of an open question mark in that regard. So did not lay the chalk here, but shout out to the sponsors, PrizePicks on this show, because I did drop my PrizePicks for, this week earlier on my Twitter account. You guys can follow at Liam Picks Fights if you want to see that stuff. But I put it out there and just said, I think that, one angle is over 2.5 takedowns for Brady Hiestand. You look at sharp markets like Bet Online, they were booking minus 115 juice to either side on the over 3.5. So, sharper markets already at a different number. 2.5 felt like a good number for me for Brady to go over, unless he gets knocked out in the first exchange. I feel like this guy's going to go out there and attempt 3 takedowns in round 1. So I like this spot on a PrizePicks look. If you're looking to get involved, use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Now, Wizz, what do you think, brother? I know that you like that PrizePicks look, but what do you like for the fight?
Yeah, I have Brady here. He's one of my few bets on this card. I just think the grappling is going to be a little bit too much for Fernie. And yeah, Fernie has a really good get-up game, but he's always susceptible to getting taken back down. And as you mentioned, that PrizePicks look, I have 5 units combined on that over 2.5 takedowns. So wrestle. That's all I'm looking for Brady. And I think he should be able to cruise as long as he finds success in the wrestling to a decision here, a unanimous decision. Fernie really didn't impress me in that Journey Newson fight. And I mean, in the Contender Series, he KO'd Joshua Weems, but we've seen Joshua Weems. He's not UFC caliber. I think he's going to struggle with the wrestling. I think as the rounds go by, Fernie's going to start gassing a little bit, and the wrestling is just going to come that much easier for Brady. So I don't see him getting out of there, but winning a decision, a unanimous decision, 29-28 or 30-27 is definitely in play here. So I have Brady as an official pick, and I have the over 2.5 takedowns.
I like it. I think my official prediction for my Roto Grinders article this week was Brady sub 3 or decision. I don't think his cardio is anything to write home about, but I also noticed Fernie was starting to get tired from building back up to his feet so many times in his last fight. So I think that's a path here where who can operate better while being tired. That could ultimately decide the fight. Gordo, what do you think?
Yeah, and I know you guys mentioned PrizePicks. I don't have PrizePicks here in Ontario, but I made a drive to the border. I used code Liam, and I joined you guys there with you as well, because I think that line is pretty wide there. I'm not going to sit here with as much conviction and tell you that Brady Hiestand money line is the way to go. I respect those spots there, but I do think that when it comes to the dynamic of the fight, he's going to be losing all the striking exchanges, and the way that judges have been really favoring damage here, I completely get a reason why Fernie Garcia could have a chance to win this fight. I'm heavily owned on Hiestand on DraftKings, and that's really been my stand on this play. I got his over on takedowns. I got his slate breaking potential on DraftKings with all that takedown and control time upside. But as for picking a money line, as much as I do think Brady wins this fight, I do think it's a decently close fight. So no play on the money line, but we're taking some huge involvement on DraftKings and PrizePicks.
Something that's just come into mind for me as well is I believe that Terrence McKinney, a guy who kind of struggled with cardio, but excellent wrestler when he comes out the gates early, very powerful, good transitions, can get that early finish. Michael Chiesa is kind of the same way. Maybe there's just something in the water with them sick jitsu fighters up in Washington. They like to get the job done early or not get it done at all. But either way, interesting to note as we move to the next fight here, guys. We got Maria Spider-Girl Oliveira taking on Vanessa, world's best stripper, Dumopoulos. And this is a great fight. You know, I actually think this is compelling. When I first thought about the fight, I said to myself, man, the physical advantages of Maria Oliveira here are just hard to ignore. She's got a lot of length. She's got a lot of size. Throws more volume on the feet. So probably if this fight stays upright, you know, it's pretty easy to project out who's going to win. But there was a couple hope spots, I would say, for Vanessa Demopoulos her last time out. Number one, she gets the win over Jinh Frey in what was mostly a striking contest. Very close decision. I bet on her in that spot. I thought it was going to play out a lot closer than the line entailed. And I think that that's what happened. You know, I don't think she won the fight necessarily, but I think that it was a very close fight. I don't think either woman had an argument that they were robbed. You know, nothing happened. They both just stood there for most of the fight. But it was Vanessa who was pursuing. She was coming forward. She was trying to throw shots. And I don't think Maria Oliveira is going to back up. I don't think she's going to be running her way, you know, trying to skirt around the octagon. Most of what she does is stand very upright on her toes and throw punches. Like up here, wide punches, straight punches, but they're always upright in her stance. I think that's why she can get caught on the counter. I think that's why she can get taken down. And frankly, Vanessa Demopoulos hit like a beautiful, dragging double. She shot in, elevated the legs, swung them sideways, got into side control. And Jinh Frey, who's a similar size to her, just rolled into a base, built up, stood up. I don't know that Maria Oliveira, who's got that long, awkward, lanky build, like it's good being tall to defend takedowns until you're on the ground. And then it stinks. Because now you're already flat and somebody else can just get parallel with you perpendicular, too early to do geometry terms. But if they get perpendicular to you, you're stuck on the ground. I think that that's the kind of thing that we could see here. You know, I would not be surprised if Vanessa Demopoulos runs her on the ground from one takedown. However, if she doesn't get the takedown, she's probably going to lose the fight. So I understand the pricing here. I'm a little more bullish on the Demopoulos side here than Oliveira. I think on the ground, Vanessa's the superior fighter. I think on the feet, Vanessa could take a solid punch and keep moving forward. I think she's got good heart. Whereas Maria Oliveira, I saw her just quit in the Contender Series one time when she was getting hit cleanly. And granted, you know, she's getting hit cleanly, but again, how many fighters have we seen get hit and keep coming forward? She was like, no mas. Thank you anyways. I'll see you later. And that was the first round of the biggest opportunity of her career, frankly. So I wouldn't back her at chalk personally. Wizz, what do you think?
I actually like the Maria Oliveira side here. I know how weak she is on the ground, and if she does get taken down, this could be over that quick. But we saw in the last fight, Maria Oliveira, striking-wise, is levels in the division. It's not the cleanest thing in the world, but the girl packs a punch. She has power, and I'm going to go back to the reach advantage here. She has a 7-inch reach advantage against Demopoulos and a 4-inch height advantage, which will help in the striking. As long as she's able to keep this upright, I think she cruises to this decision win, and I think she might be able to get a TKO, a standing TKO. We saw Silvana, who is notorious for dropping people, drop Demopoulos, but proceeds to get the armbar. So that wasn't a good look for Silvana, but I don't think the same thing is going to happen here. Maria has some jiu-jitsu of her own that she can practice. So I'm on the Oliveira side, but nothing too heavy, just a 1-unit shot here. I think the line's a little bit off, maybe like minus 130, 140 for Oliveira, I think is the right line.
I feel that. Makes sense to me. Gordo, what do you think?
Yeah, that's fair. And you know what? I taped this fight. I look at it. I'm like, I'm not betting this fight. You have someone who is awful on the ground, Oliveira, versus someone who is a walking punching bag. It's not really a high level fight to really bet on, in my opinion. But they did open on FanDuel the Demopoulos sub at 440. I had to take a shot at plus 440 on the sub. I do think that with those long limbs, with the lack of ground skills for Oliveira, that's really seemed to me to be a big win condition for someone in Demopoulos. I think her wrestling is improving, but I don't trust her to go out there consistently shoot takedowns and win minutes. So you have to think the win condition is sub or bust. And at plus 440, I had to take a stab. So told myself I wasn't betting it, ended up betting it. Either way, not the strongest conviction on it. I just think that the line's a bit wide.
Understood. And the brief closeout here, guys, it's just Maria Oliveira training at Piranha Valley Tudo, produced a lot of credible women in the UFC, also produced the Estela Nunez's of the world. So we don't want to just automatically rope in like, they train with the right people, so they're going to be, this good. Same thing on the other side. Vanessa Demopoulos now training at Fight Ready, everybody's favorite gym. didn't show her, hitting 50 blast doubles in the last fight, but it did show progress. It did show that she's putting together some of those wrestling elements. And I feel like against Jin Yu Frey, it was harder to get her wrestling game off. Against somebody with this big, long torso with the hips right at her face level, I feel like we're going to see more takedown attempts from Vanessa, but it's yet to be seen whether or not she's going to get those takedowns. So next up, guys, we've got a compelling fight here. Ricky Turcios is back in the saddle again, and he's taking on Kevin Natividad, right? And I've said before, I thought Kevin Natividad has been done wrong a little bit by his UFC run. My man just got brutally fouled by Miles Johns, holding the glove clear as day. Go back and rewatch it before you at me. He's holding the glove, throws a big uppercut, absolutely sends my man Kevin on a spring, shooting through the air. Horrific knockout. And I think that could affect you forever. I think that could change your confidence. I think that could affect your ability to continue in this profession. Maybe he shows something different. Maybe he shows something better. But he's been out of the cage. And meanwhile, we got Ricky on the other hand. What was his real downside in that last fight? He didn't land anything. He threw a lot. He went for lots of volume. But I said before the fight, I thought that it was a tough stylistic matchup. I thought Amin Zahabi, who had some craft, who was a clever striker, who's been training with high-level UFC pros for 10 years, was going to do a good job of moving, evading most of the strikes from Ricky. Ricky likes to get guys who are aggressive coming towards him and get into a fight with them. He can normally fight at a pace they can't sustain. But if you don't give Ricky his fight, it's a lot harder for him to win. What do I expect from Kevin? I expect Kevin's going to give him his fight. I expect Kevin's going to come forward, try and swing, take his head off. I think if you do that, Ricky's going to keep some volume on you. He might mix it up into the clinch. He might go for takedowns. He might try and take your back. He's just going to try and keep you working at a really high pace rate. And I don't think that Kevin's going to want to do that. He's a little bit more muscular. He's a little bit shorter, more stout. And I thought he was slowing down against Miles Johns in round 3. I thought that Miles Johns was slowing down too. So I felt like both of them were slowing down a little bit. That's what left the opening for that cheap little maneuver that he used to get the finish. But either way, more credit to him, got the win there. And Kevin now, he's staring at the barrel of 0-3 in the UFC if he can't get over the hump here. I actually think this is going to sound a little silly, but I think Turcios is live for the knockout here. If you're throwing 200 strikes, let's say you land 100 of them, you're going against a guy who's been knocked out brutally 3 times in his career, including like in the first minute on the regional scene. So it's not like it's just a UFC problem. Plus, the knockouts that he suffered in the UFC were horrific. Bad damage. Danaa Bakary knocked him out bad and then got knocked out bad in his next fight. And then you look at on the other side, Miles Johns knocks him out bad, then goes on to get submitted. He's been knocked out in the UFC. Neither one of them are bulletproof here. But who does the UFC want to win? I would have to imagine it's Ricky Turcios. I would have to imagine they want the guy that they put all the time, effort, energy, and dollars into on The Ultimate Fighter to get back on track. And they gave him Amin Zahabi thinking, hey, Amin's been knocked out before. Amin's been in some fun fights. Maybe we get this fun fight out of him. It was a real stinker. They put it on a UFC Apex card. Nobody's the wiser. Okay, run it back. Get this kid some momentum. Try and build him back up. I think that's what they're doing, and I think Turcios gets the win. Wizz, how do you feel?
I completely agree, and this is my final bet for the night. It's Ricky Turcios moneyline. For me, I think that last fight was just an anomaly. You don't go from landing 100 plus 100 plus significant strikes. If you're landing 100 plus takedowns, I don't know what you're doing in that cage. But you don't go from
Shout out Marab.
You don't go from landing 100 plus significant strikes in multiple fights in a row to 27 like that. Either something was wrong or Turcios didn't train as hard, or quite clearly Zahabi was a very tough matchup for him. And I think this is a really good bounce back spot for Turcios. Natividad doesn't have defense for anything. And on another hand, after that horrific performance from Turcios, his significant strike percentage landing accuracy was around like 33% roughly. But when you go to look at Natividad's striking accuracy, it's at 27%, so even worse. So it's either going to be a real stinker on both sides here, or I think Turcios is able to style on him, and I'm favoring the later side. And I do like the finish shout that you mentioned, Liam. So give me Turcios.
Yeah, and I'm not like loading up on Turcios money line, right? I've actually only bet against him so far in the UFC, so that's why I think I'm being objective when I say I think this is a winnable fight for him. I bet Brady Highstand against him. Thought that Brady had that one in the bag. Thought he really could have won that fight. Made some critical errors down the stretch. Kind of got too tired and got dropped in round 3. But that's the kind of thing where, is Turcios going to come out there and blast you in round 1 with an overhand right that sends you flying? No. but is he able to land enough volume that he could put somebody away? Yes. And I think that Brady showed some heart and toughness and determination to stay in that fight. I don't know that everybody would do the same, especially when they're starting to gas. So, Gordo, how do you feel about this one? Do you think that we're out to lunch?
You know what, man? When everyone started coming out with their predictions, and I was looking around the Twitter sphere, and I saw nothing but hate for Ricky Tercios, and I get it. He put out a stinker last time out. He did awful. This is recency bias, and you know what? I was all over the Ricky Tercios side earlier in the week. I know he had a horrendous last performance, but you look at his past pedigree, and if you get rid of that last fight, he'd be a much larger favorite in this spot. I think he has all the tools to get this done pretty convincingly. And you know what, man? I was so close to making this my lock of the night. I didn't do it. I was so close. These glasses are right here. They were so close. Either way, man, this is a fight where he has all the tools to get it done. He has the right skill set. It's just, can he operate? Can he do it properly? Because he had the skill set last time out. He just wasn't able to land anything, right? So I think he's able to learn from his mistakes. I get it. It's hard to trust somebody who's burned you in the past, but I truly think that this is the guy that UFC is trying to get into. This is the guy that UFC is trying to build up. This is the spot that they want him to do well in, and Kevin Ativat has nothing to write home about. So give me Ricky Tercios. I think he has the tools to get it done, and I think he gets it done pretty convincingly.
I like it. The one thing I'll say, shout out to my man WW in the chat, says Kevin got something to prove. I like this fight so much because both guys back against the wall in a big way. Like Ricky, he's the more public guy. He's the more known guy. He's got to get this win. He's got to get back on track after that disappointing performance where I think everybody would rather put that one in the rearview mirror and never watch that fight again. On the other side, you know, Kevin, this is his life. This is his work. My man's 0-2 now in the UFC, needs this win to stay probably employed with the company, and I think he's going to bring the fire. So should be a hell of a barn burner, and that's exactly why I like the Tercios side just ever so slightly. I think he's going to bring a fight that is on Ricky's terms, where they're in the pocket going wild. But does that mean Ricky can't get clipped on the chin? No, it does not. He has been knocked out before. It happened to him against Mana Martinez, another UFC level fighter. So I just want to put that out there. Kevin's not drawn dead in this fight. He does have power. He could swing. He's going to come out there and make it a fight, but I think Ricky's got the skills to pay the bills this weekend. Miles Johns.
Ricky also has the power of the Dragon Ball. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, man. He's a funny interview. I'll give him that. I liked what he had to say at Media Day as well. Said he's focused on making improvements, fight over fight. That's what you got to do. You got to put that one in the rear view. So I think he's going to try and do that this weekend. Next up, guys, another bantamweight fight. A lot of lower weight card fights on this card, 35, 25. You're seeing a lot of that on this card. And Miles Johns taking on Vince Morales. Guys, I'm going to be super brief about this one. I've never been sold on Miles Johns. I don't believe in him as a prospect. It's not to say he's not good. It's not to say he can't win this fight. I just haven't believed in him putting it all together. What I mean by that is I have looked to get on the other side of Miles Johns at various opportunities. I did bet John Castaneda as an underdog in the last fight. So you look at what he brings to the table. He's got a very potent jab. He is strong. He's got good physicality for 135. He's a pretty stout body, but he's got decent enough length on his arms. He can normally connect with the target. He steps into his punches, so he can land the jab from maybe a foot further away from most other people. He's willing to really commit, step into his shots, and it also sets up his big overhand. So I think those are the tools that he uses really well. He can put out a good low kick as well. He likes to throw in combination. I just feel like, number one, haven't seen him mix up the game as much as you'd want him to. He can wrestle. You know, you see it on the regional scene. You can tell just by his body style that the guy can wrestle, but he doesn't choose to wrestle most of the time. He likes to go out there and strike. He's got Fortis MMA behind him. I think that, you know, they've put some time, effort, and energy into this guy. I think they believe in his upside, but round 3 is always dicey, you know, for a Miles Johns fight. And I felt like, you know, the writing was on the wall at some points early in his career. The Cole Smith fight, I have my notes on that, where I thought Cole Smith was about to rally to beat him. And I was like, oh my gosh. There's a couple times that he's just left the door open for an opponent. And so I look at this fight and I say to myself, Vince Morales is simply not somebody you could ever bet on as a favorite in the UFC. He doesn't do enough. He doesn't do enough in terms of his volume on the feet. He doesn't do enough in terms of mixing up the game. He's never trying to implement his grappling, for example, but he's kind of an all-rounder. You know, he doesn't do anything very good. He's very bad at defending leg kicks. But outside of that, you know, if you just give him a meat and potato striking fight, it's going to go to split decision. He's going to stand there. He's going to throw his heavy shots. He's going to try and return in combination with the two hands. But he really doesn't put much sophistication out there, as far as I could tell. I don't think his shot selection is anything to write home about. So I think unless he wins this in a rally, unless he comes back and knocks him out in the last round, I do think Miles Johns is probably going to get the win here. But Miles Johns took this fight on short notice. He's replacing somebody else who was supposed to fight here at the event. I forget off the top of my head. And with that being said, I can't trust Miles on a short notice fill-in spot. I do think he gets the win. I think he's got the superior skill set for winning minutes here. I think he does more. I think he puts out more activity, but I can't trust the guy. So I'm personally going to pass on this one, but we'll mix it up. I'll send it to my man Gordo first.
Ooh, switching it up. Yeah, I'm going to be brief on this one. I think that I have also been bullish on Johns as well, but I think this is a matchup where everything he does best is what Morales struggles against. And I'm struggling to see what Morales brings to the table other than pretty good power. And that power in itself only coming from one side, I don't know. I'm on the John side here. I think he has more tools to get it done. I think he has grappling side. I think he has leg kick ability. I think he has minute winning ability. I think he wins this fight pretty convincingly. Back-to-back 3-unit bets, Tercios, Johns. Let's do it.
Backstabber. Is this true? He's with Glory for this camp. Holy shit. Well, I know what fight I'm passing on. All right. I like your angle, though, Gordo. I think that, skill for skill, Miles John's probably a better fighter. What he's put out there, definitely better. Resume in the UFC, he's fought better guys. So all those boxes are checked for me. But there's certain guys you just have a bad feeling about him, or you just don't like you don't want to get too invested. That's kind of how I feel about him. But I don't think that it's a bad read. I think that if you've got the courage and your convictions, 3-unit bet, fuck yeah. I'm now rooting for Miles Johns. What's up, Wizz? What do you got?
Not too much thought on this one. I have a 0.2 unit shot untracked on Morales round 3 KO at plus 2,900. So I had to take that.
I think that's his path. I think that's his path. Shout out you.
Yeah, most definitely. And we've seen the chin issues with Johns towards the later rounds. And Morales, if there is anything to harp on, one of his biggest strengths or his strength is the right hand. And if he lands on you clean, I don't rate the Johns chin, as I mentioned earlier, I think it can happen. I might look stupid for not just taking the outright KO at plus 600, plus 650. But I think I just want to lay 0.2 units on this fight. I don't want to stress on anything more than that, because I do see the path for Johns with the leg kicks. If he does go smart and use his brain, take the guy down, he'll probably look like a hindsight 300 minus 400 favorite, because, as you mentioned, in the regional scene, this guy was taking people down left and right. And I don't know why he's deviated away from that during his UFC career. I think he's landed a total of 3 takedowns in the UFC, if I'm not wrong. So it could go one of many ways in this fight. So it's too much variance that I could see happening here. There's too much unknowns about both fighters, whether Johns is fully fit, if he's in the right mindset coming in on short notice, the chin issues for both fighters, the leg issue for Morales. Yeah, there's too much for me to even place a real money line bet here either. So I'm just sticking to the Morales knockout shout. I do think Johns wins, but not convicted enough.
I feel you here, man. This is a really tricky fight. I don't think that it deserves a tremendous amount of analysis. I think my man Gordo hit the nail on the head. Just from a minute winning standpoint, should be Miles Johns here. He should get it across the finish line. Vince Morales has never really shown a tremendous amount of upside at the UFC level. But the one thing I'll give to his credit is he has shown decent enough defense from a wrestling perspective. He's not easy to just wrestle and grapple and take down so far from what we've seen in his fights. And I think that could be interesting here, where the reason why somebody doesn't choose to wrestle when they have it in their back pocket, almost always, almost invariably, it's tiring. If you've ever wrestled before, it's exhausting. So I think that, Miles Johns, somebody who's been struggling to close out those third rounds, he's thinking to himself, why the hell would I go out there and wrestle? Then it's going to be harder for me to stay, the full 15 minutes from a cardiovascular standpoint. But that being said, guys, we can move along because we've got a women's flyweight bout coming up next that has been the talk of the town. Jennifer Maia coming from, a couple title opportunities and whatever. I also think it's good to give this perspective that she's 4-5 in the UFC. Right? You could say it as she's a former title challenger. You could say she's fought a great quality of competition. I could say she's 4-5 in the UFC, right? So that's why I don't think it's, this huge level gap, this huge disparity. She's fought better girls. She's lost to better girls. She hasn't won many minutes against the good girls that she has fought, but she's been competitive. She's shown that on the striking, she'll go out there and match your volume, basically throw, 1 to 2 shots for every 2 to 3 shots you're going to throw. But hers look a little bit more powerful. She throws the overhands. She'll commit to the pocket boxing. I thought she lost pretty cleanly to Jess Guy, telling you the truth. I bet on Jess Guy. I watched through green colored glasses, but, she got a cut on her head from a clash of heads. And they graded, like, basically everything that she did in terms of work went out the window because she was the one bleeding. So this is the kind of fight where optics will matter. You know, I feel like this is destined to go to the scorecards. I truly do. You know, I don't see either of these women as a prolific finisher. I don't see either of them as being super vulnerable to getting finished in this spot. Would it stun me if Maya was the one that got on top in the takedown exchanges? No, she did this to Valentina. She's pretty strong and physical in the upper body. I just don't think she's a dynamic, you know, jiu-jitsu player on the bottom. I don't think she's going to pass the guard and start attacking it. Most of what she does is grab a hold of somebody and cling to him. On the ground, on the feet, she's not very offensive. So I think that this is probably split decision territory with Moroz getting a slight nod here if she's able to get takedowns or if she's able to control it against the fence. But because of the physicality questions, I don't feel bullish about betting either of these fighters at all. Wizz, how do you feel?
Yeah, not much to harp on in this fight either. Moroz has the ability to take her down, but as you mentioned, I do think Maya is able to be the one that lands on top, just due to the sheer fact that she's a smart Brazilian jiu-jitsu player who knows her positions well, but is not an opportunistic finisher by any means. So usually when you see jiu-jitsu practitioners like that, they're really good at the positions and just transitioning from getting taken down into landing on top of someone or into side control, into side mount, whatever it is. So I do think Maya is being a little bit disrespected here. I don't think the line is quite accurate, maybe a little bit closer to minus 130 Moroz. It's probably just due to the last fight that Moroz had against Agapova. And that's all I could think, to be honest. I don't favor each of these fighters on the feet. I think it's pretty equal. Finishing upside, not really. I think this does go to the scorecards. As a pure pick, I'm going to have to say Moroz, because if she does land on top in the takedowns, she does have some clean ground and pound. But if that doesn't happen, obviously, which is a very real possibility, I'm going to have to say Maya wins the fight. So give me Moroz as a pure pick, but no bets on this fight.
Yeah, I think Noah might have hit it on the head there. He says dogger pass situation. That's what it feels like. You know, it's a WMMA spot. It's not like Marina Moroz has given you 10 reasons to go bet on her in this fight. She's beaten the people she's supposed to beat. She has a pretty decent resume in the UFC, but it's also marred by some areas of inactivity, and the girls that she has beat have been below her level. How does that project when she goes against somebody at or above her level? It's very difficult to say. Gordo, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short. We are running out of time here before the fight starts. Let me just say, gun to my head, Moroz wins. Is the line too wide? Yes. No bet involved. Cheering for Maya, gun to my head, picking Moroz.
I love it. I love it. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We are now up to the featured prelim of the night. We're going to cover this featured prelim, and then we're going to go in descending order. We're going to start at the main event, and we're going to go the rest of the way back down, try and get you guys all the fights you care about before we get out of here. Now, what we've got next, Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking on Charles Johnson. And guys, I got to be honest with you. Tell you about the bets I win. Tell you about the bets I lose. I should have won Zhalgas Zhumagulov 6 units at plus 160. That was some fucking bullshit. That was some bullshit. But anyways, we'll take it. We'll take the L. We'll roll with it. We'll take that one on the chin. Here's what I think about this fight. I think that Zhalgas Zhumagulov is probably the betting side. Now, I don't feel extremely bullish on this. Like I said, didn't fire off a lot of pre-bets on this card. But the one that I'm hoping my guest will talk me into is Zhalgas Zhumagulov, ZZ Top. Reason being, Charles Johnson just conceded about 15 minutes of a fight in the rear waist cinch, right? That's just, you can't do that. He's 31 years old. He's had a long professional career. He's had many fights. A lot of his fights are marred by periods of takedowns, inactivity, guys holding onto his back. I think he's very defensively sound. I think he knows exactly what to do to not get submitted. But he does that and nothing more. He does not get out of the position. He does not clear hands. He does not separate. So if he's wise, he's going to make all those adaptations in this game. He's going to go out there. He's going to make sure that he is more aggressive, stays out of bad positions, forces Zhalgas to work at an insane pace. But if all that doesn't happen, I don't understand why this wouldn't be another minus 115 coin flip decision when Zhalgas holds on to him for 14 minutes and Charles throws a bunch of, short shots behind him, from a side headlock or something. That's honestly the fight I see playing out here. I don't think either one finishes at a very high clip. But the other question I have is, Zhalgas, the one guy he was able to get out of there, the one guy he was able to put away was somebody who was a lot taller than him, who's a little bit longer than him. He was able to fold him over get him bent down in a wrestling exchange. He got the choke. He never let it go. You know, it was a brutal choke, by the way. Jerome Rivera, he did everything he could. He tried to cage walk his feet up to get out of that choke, but it was tight as all get out, excuse me. So just because one guy who's talented, Makayev, doesn't get the finish, doesn't mean nobody can finish this guy in the grappling. He's never been finished to this point, but I don't think it's a 0% chance that Zalgas submits him, for example. So I think Zalgas is probably the side here. I think that he could win a close decision. I think he could potentially out-grapple, out-wrestle Charles Johnson. I think he could keep it competitive on the feet, but he's very old for the division. So this is why it will not be a huge play for me. If anything, I could see this being the end of the Zalgas run, but the guy's got a ton of followers, right? He's 1-4 in the UFC, but they kept him around because he should probably be 3-2 in the UFC. So the guy's just had this penchant for fighting to close split decisions. I can't go against him here as an underdog in this spot. I think it's a tricky scenario. Wizz, what do you think?
Moneyline side is definitely Zalgas, but if you're just asking me about an opinion on what I think the fight's going to play out, I think this is going to be mainly on the feet, where I think Johnson just cruises to a decision here. Zalgas' striking defense is not all that good. And towards the later rounds, he does seem to lose gas if you're putting a pace on him, which happens to quite often with most people. But in this division specifically, you don't see it all that often. So I think Charles Johnson is going to be able to keep his range and keep Zalgas at bay and just strike him for 3 rounds. I don't think the grappling exchanges are going to be that long, if there are any. So I just favored Johnson here just because he's a better striker. But if you're betting money line, you have to go with Zalgas. I'm not going to be betting -170 on Charles Johnson, who we don't really know too much about yet.
I would tend to agree. And like his best win, I feel like for Charles is, you know, the Carlos Mota win, which aged horrifically when he made his UFC debut. I mean, the guy looked like he was a 0 grappler. And I say that with all due respect, you know, but he looked like a 0 grappler in his UFC debut. He could show a lot better in fights moving forward, but that was an extremely competitive fight. Mota was probably winning most of that fight, including some wrestling exchanges. So it's just all that seems very dubious. You know, I think a lot of people overread that fight potentially, myself included, for Carlos Mota's, ceiling. I think he could still make those improvements, but a lot of improvements to be made. I think we would agree. Gordo, how do you feel?
I think if you look at this fight from a broader perspective, the person who has more tools to win this fight is going to be Charles Johnson. However, if we look at who has the X factor in this spot, that is Zalgas. I think Zalgas has the X factor, and is can he implement that wrestling? Can he have a control-heavy game plan? And I don't think he can. I think that even though he does have this wrestling in his back pocket and Johnson was just able to get up his back as much as he did, I don't see Zalgas as a control grappler. I don't see him as someone who's going to threaten Johnson as much as Makayev did, or as much as even Mota did in that last fight as well. I think Johnson not only has the tools on the feet, but he has the get-up game, separation, durability, cardio. I think he has all the tools to get this done. And he's my pick to win this fight. However, I've not gotten to the window on it because that X factor is there for Zalgas. If he's been drilling that back take, those takedowns, that control time, he could definitely win. I could definitely see it. But I really do think it's Charles Johnson's fight to lose.
You mean if he had been at ATT with Pahumpa and Sergey Morozov and a couple of them boys putting in the wrestling rounds? Yeah, I did see that on the IG. So I'm hoping that my man Zalgas comes out here with his shoes and headgear and doesn't fuck around with my money. But I think I'm probably going to end up getting to a small play on Zalgas. And my man James is asking in the chat, any value on Zalgas sub at plus 2,000, Liam? Maybe marginal value. The one thing I would say is this. Charles Johnson's never been finished. So, you know, betting on guys to get finished, you could find upside because they haven't been finished before. The odds makers are saying it's very unlikely. But I don't think that Zalgas is aggressive enough to justify that necessarily. You know, I would almost look, if you were going to look that way at an ITD, it's probably plus 1,000 or so if the sub is so high. So yeah, I would try not to get cute here. I think if you're going to play it, Zalgas is probably the money line side, but it's a greasy fight and won't be surprised if Charles gets his hand raised. Now, guys, starting with that main event, we're going to work our way back down the card. We got 10 minutes left to break down these fights. So very quickly, I'm going to give my thoughts on Derek Lewis, guys. I think that Derek Lewis is a guy, he's probably my top 5 most profitable fades in UFC history. That's truthful. I bet a lot of money, 5 units on Tai Tuivasa, plus 170. I bet a good chunk, I think around 4.5 units on Sergey Pavlovich, plus 116. Thought that those were great spots. Now we're talking about somebody who's favored. We're talking about somebody who is, you know, Sergey Spivak has been knocked out by this archetype of fighter twice in the UFC. So I do think that there is a lot that's being baked into this fight in terms of negative perception around Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis is on his way out. Derek Lewis stinks. Derek Lewis has one path to victory. But then you look, they are exactly correlating the knockout with the money line, right? You're basically being asked to take either plus 175 on the money line or plus 210 on the KO. It's like they're saying they're the same thing, right? You look at Sergey Spivak. Who's beaten him? Walt Harris. Explosive guy, comes forward, doesn't have many skills at all to write home about. Been around MMA, tough guy, big power. That's it. Easily finished him. Wasn't a competitive fight. All right, next up. We talk about who else he lost to. Tom Aspinall. Hit him with one knee to the body. Who initiated the clinch? Sergey. Gets hit with one knee to the body. He was like, literally staring off in space when he got hit with the 1-2 behind it, right? My man was finished. That fight was going to be over anyway. So I don't think he's great in the clinch, except for with his takedowns. I think if he gets the takedowns going, this is kind of like Charles and Islam. I had said in that fight, I was like, yeah, if Islam can't get the takedowns going, Charles is going to butcher him in the clinch. If he gets the takedowns going from the clinch, Charles is done because that is the connective framework. That is the connective tissue to his game. This is the kind of fight where I see Sergey Spivak isn't a John Smith low single leg, right? He's not going to go out there and fire a Gamrot low single into your calf and take you down. That's not what he does. He goes out there and tries to judo throw people. And when you go against somebody like Greg Hardy, who's been in MMA for 15 minutes, maybe you can hit that judo toss. But I don't know that that's going to work as you get to the higher levels of the division. You look at Derek Lewis. Has he been supremely easy to take down with clinch throws? No. You've seen guys take him down occasionally, or you see guys barrel over him, just more physical, strong, run into him. And then what happens? He normally does the Derek Lewis get up. It's not a real get up. It's not, you can't go drill this at jiu-jitsu. But he goes, I'm getting up now. And he decides and he gets up. And most people can't do that. That's an insane physical skill set. But I said it last week about Montel Jackson, and it was true. And I'm saying it this week about Derek Lewis. Go look at my Twitter. I posted this out, the video. I said, for all my arguments about Derek Lewis, this is the source material. The guy will go from here, no frames in, nothing, and get up to his feet. From flat on his back, from the side mount, from bottom mount, from full guard, from half guard. It doesn't make sense. So I think probably 2 or 3 of those are in play for Derek Lewis. He's an explosive guy. He says he changed camps. He says he changed boxing coaches. He says that he invested in his camp and is showing up in shape. He said these things before, but he's shown up with the same guys. He's shown up with – this is a new camp for him. That's for real. I looked. He's not working with Bob Perez, who he normally has as his primary coach. He said he brought in somebody else to give him a plan, to give him where to go train, what day, at what time. If that all is true – I feel like this is the kind of fight where everybody says Sergey Spivak's going to dominate him. He's going to run through him. And I fell into this with Chris Dawkins. I've otherwise been very good at picking Derek Lewis fights and knowing when to get in on the fade and when to get out. But now you're being asked not only to say, Spivak wins the fight, to say he wins at 65, 70% of the time against a guy whose primary loss condition has been guys that are better strikers than him, not guys that are better wrestlers. Go back through the data. You look at the best wrestler probably going right now in the division, Curtis Blades, gets knocked out flatline, never got a takedown, never sniffed one. I don't really need to make much more of an argument than that. I'll leave it there. I like Derek Lewis. I think he knocks this guy out. Wizz, how do you feel?
Yeah, just before I get into that, just to address this comment, whoever this smoking pug dude is, I just want you to appreciate that Liam's doing these picks early on, whether he's doing them or not. Liam gets paid to release his picks. They're not free picks. So don't even worry about that. If you don't want to enjoy the show, you can X out of your browser. Now on to the fight. Derek Lewis, I did want to bring up that he did switch camps here. And who knows? This could be the spot to bet Derek Lewis. If every time when I meet someone who's changed camps, or when they're changing from a different camp to mine, to King's, and you see them transform as a fighter, especially if you've known them before and known their tendencies. Whenever you switch camps, they become a little bit different. They're more disciplined. They're more serious about the craft within those first month to 2 months, just because they want to show the coaches that they're all about it. So we could see a different version of Derek Lewis here, a little bit more motivated. Spivak, I do like a lot of his attributes. I think he has all the tools to beat Derek Lewis, but the issue is Derek Lewis has that off switch. He can turn you off with one punch. And that's my issue here. I don't want to be laying a minus 210, 220 price tag on someone who can get hit with the kill switch like this. with a lot of the angles that he creates to going into these takedowns. It's a lot similar to how he knocked out Curtis Blades, or shooting a lackadaisical takes down, and then he gets uppercutted to the face and he's done. So I definitely think this is a Lewis spot. I'm definitely not going to be touching the Spivak side. I haven't touched anything in this fight specifically, but if I were to bet anything last minute, it's going to be Derek Lewis money line. I have to do it, especially given the new motivation, new camp, and the susceptibility of that big knockout punch.
Wiz, I tend to agree with you, man. And I want to say, everybody in the chat, I'll try and get here as early as possible. That's the truth. I try to get here as early as possible. Last night, I was too tired. I went to sleep, and I feel like I've given a much better show as a result. So appreciate you guys for being here, whether you support the show or not. If you have constructive criticism, go ahead, drop it in the comment section below. I do read it. I do take it seriously, and I appreciate the feedback, positive or negative. Gordo, what do you think, my brother?
Yeah, there's 3 minutes before fight time. I'm not going to take much of that time to break down this fight. I think it's pretty
Don't
simple.
worry. There's going to be 15 minutes of John Anik spinning a web on the
Probably.
freaking TV screen. Don't you worry. We got plenty of time.
I just think it's tough to break down a Derek Lewis fight. It's an if fight, right? If he's able to land it. I know you guys are talking about all these changes. Well, Derek Lewis is who he is. He's a brawler. He's not a guy who's going to go out there and really be technical, work behind his jab. And it's a guy who's going to either land the kill shot or not. And I think that if he doesn't really land it early on, I think he's going to struggle with the pressure, the ground and pound, the advancement of Spivak. That being said, no bet on this fight. Give me violence. That's all I want. Under 2.5. Fight doesn't start round 3. Under 1.5. I think it ends early, and I hope it does.
I love it, man. I love it. Let me tell you guys, the truth is, I don't think that Derek Lewis is going to show a better product than he's shown before. None of that. But if he shows up and he's in decent enough shape and he just waits for a shot and doesn't do anything else, I think he can win the fight. That's exactly what he did against Curtis. There was no sophistication, guys. He was basically letting Curtis land on him too. Like at the beginning, he's standing there. He's going like this. He's waiting. He's like, touch me with the jab. Yeah, no problem. Touch me again with the jab. And the second he committed to a shot, Derek read it easily, threw an uppercut, and the night's over shortly thereafter. Against Kyle Dawkins, it was even less sophisticated than that. Chris Dawkins, excuse me. He just walked him down and swung heavies. That's it. That was the whole fight. And because it was in the small octagon in the apex, he had nowhere to go. Where are you going to go? It's you and Derek, and he's running at you throwing heavies. Nowhere. So I think unless we see the best reactive double leg from Sergey Spivak that we've ever seen, I have a feeling it's going to be Derek Lewis first round knockout getting the job done here. Next up, guys, very quickly, do you guys have a bullish take one way or the other on Ion Cutelaba and Kennedy Nzechukwu? I know that our man Prodigy in the chat before was saying that he thought Ion Cutelaba plus 150, his most confident read of the card. So, Gordo, what do you think, brother?
Ion early, Kennedy late. I think I'm going to be pretty general in this spot here. Ion's a guy who has a decent skill set. I just don't think he's implemented it properly. So a weird one to get a read on. If I'm being honest, I got some fight doesn't go parlayed up with some Bellator action yesterday, but that's all I got. Give me violence. I think DraftKings wise, these are good fights to target. I think there's definitely a path to victory for Ion. He's just untrustworthy at this point.
You're damn right he is. I also think that, the one thing I like about Ion, he trains with a good camp, man. He's at Extreme Couture. You'd expect that he's eventually going to show some improvements, but we keep seeing him make some of the same mistakes. So a little bit hard for me to endorse him right now. Don't think that this is a horrible matchup for him. But I do think that as the fight wears on, like Gordo mentioned, Kennedy has shown he could just stay in a fight that's going poorly and then come back and win it. So don't want to be extremely bullish on Ion. But I do think that this is the right point here. Watch Danilo versus Kennedy. Danilo easily took his back. And by the way, I bet Danilo in that spot. I was so brokenhearted that he got finished in that third round. But that's the kind of visions of fear that I have for what could happen if Ion doesn't get to those positions. And you look, he's not really a traditional great back taker. He's more so a guy who likes to put on, what I would call a folk style wrestling ride. So I think that if he does that, he could look, hindsight big favorite. But I also think if he can't keep it up for 15 minutes, it could collapse at any point. Wiz, how do you feel, brother?
I like the under 1.5 a lot here. I think this is going to be a typical Ion fight, even though he came out looking really friendly in the face-offs for once and ever. So I think
never know what to make of that, right?
Yeah, that's like, wait, what? Very odd to see. I like the under 1.5. We saw in the last fight, Kennedy did show the aggression and show the opportunistic finishing is starting to build up in him. And I think he's a guy that over time is going to find his wave in the UFC. I do think this is an E1 moneyline betting spot too. So all this points to a round 1 finish on either side for me, but I'm actually favoring E1 here for a submission in round 1.
Oh shit. Wizz, can I tell you, I had a $5 free bet on Caesars and I bet it on Kutalaba sub in round 1. I swear to God. I just feel like this is the kind of fight where Ion is probably at a rare grappling advantage, right? He might actually be the better grappler, the better submission fighter in this spot. But I also just think, like, you look at them stand next to each other, does it not look like Iwan is a middleweight and, you know, Kennedy could be a heavyweight tomorrow? Like, that's what it looks like to me. Like, Kennedy just looks huge. I don't think he's going to get bullied around too easily here. But, you know, I think Prodigy is hitting on the right note, which is, if you like Iwan here, it's because his skills are actually better. Like, he can take this guy down. He's just better at wrestling. He's better at those skills. I think when it comes to physicality, that's where it gets so interesting, because even if you're really good at wrestling, even if you're way better than the guy, if he's heavy, if he's hard to lift, if he's awkward, if he's long, it could just tire you out trying to wrestle him. So I think it's a great fight, very compelling, and I see why they put it in the co-main event here tonight. Last couple picks here real quick. Guys, I'll get you out of here because I know the fights are starting. Chase Sherman, Waldo Cortez Acosta. Anybody have a bullish take?
Sketchy fight, coming back too early for Waldo. Line's too wide, but can you trust Chase Sherman? That's all I got to say.
Fair play. Wiz, what do you got?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Even better. All right, boys, here's my last bullish take of the card before we talk about the last juiced up favorite. I haven't bet this yet. I think Andre Fialho is going to knock out Muslim Salikov in the first 2 rounds here. Everybody's talking about Muslim Salikov. Everybody's talking about he's the better fighter. He's fought better guys. He's got better skills. Couldn't disagree with you. Here's the problem. He's fought a lot of guys that are old. He fought a lot of guys that are his age, and he did okay. And they started giving him this younger contingency. By the way, the Leech is only like 3 or 4 years younger than him. The Leech looked way younger than him. The Leech looked way fresher than him. The Leech looked way more dynamic than him. Andre Fialho, I think all the same things are going to be true. He's 10 years younger, right? He's going to come out here. He's going to have, the speed advantage, in my opinion, pretty clearly. And he doesn't have a great chin. So either one of these guys could go down. I feel better about the fight ending inside the distance. I did, on PrizePicks, play the under 10 minutes on fight time here. And again, I know a lot of people think, Muslim Salikov may be a decision. I don't see that. I think that Fialho will either get knocked out or knock this guy out. I think he's going to come forward. I think he's going to swing heavies. He did say he needs to be smarter. He needs to be more patient in this fight. So maybe it's round 2, not round 1. But I just have a feeling that we're going to see Fialho pick his spots here, be a little bit faster to the target, and eventually find Salikov with a big knockout shot. What do you think, Wiz?
I completely agree on this ending in the round 1 or round 2. I have that same bet on PrizePicks for under 10 minutes. I do think Fialho is a killer be killed fighter by nature. So if he doesn't get if he doesn't touch the chin, his chin's going to get touched. His defense is god awful. And Salikov has put some people away in his time, and Fialho can definitely knock Salikov out, especially with Salikov coming out with a knockout from his last loss, and it's been only like 3 or 4 months. It's a little bit too short. Definitely going to be ending in knockout within the first 2 rounds, in my opinion. Either fighter. I don't have a favorite side here, but the under 2.5, if you can get that, solid. Or ends inside the distance is only minus 150 or 160, so even better.
I was telling people I saw Fialho plus 110 on Bet Rivers. Everywhere else had moved to pick him. So I made a deposit. Your boy's ready. And then I go to play it, and it's minus 103. And I was like, you son of a bitch. So I just ended up passing here so far, but I do think that Fialho is probably the side here. 10-year youth advantage, you're normally looking at a minus 175 favorite. That's what I can tell you. Most of the time in this spot, you're looking at a minus 175 or higher, just based on that advantage alone. Can Salikov land that big spinning kick? Sure. Has he done it recently? No. Has he done it against guys that are young? No. So those are the things that make me not so bullish on that. Gordo, what do you think, brother?
Yeah, they don't have John Anik out for you today, by the way. No John at the Apex for you.
Oh, they're starting the fights right now?
No. I'm just saying it's Fitzgerald, Bisping, and Felder talking. No Anik for you, my friend.
Oh, dude, Anik deserves a week off after that pay-per-view, huh?
Yeah, man, he was tired there. But yeah, this is a fight where I think if you give me both these guys in their prime, stylistically, Salikov's a much better fighter. But you got to play into the fact that he's older. Despite him having, I think, more tools to win this fight, he's at more of a threat here, in my opinion, because the one thing Fialho has is pressure and power. And I think that against someone who is older, who's shown to be knocked out in the past, it's not really something you want to be up against. I think that when it comes down to who is the more skilled fighter, has more path to victory, sure, it's Salikov. I just don't know if I can trust him being the older fighter, being a guy who's been knocked out. So I don't mind your shot on the violence, but this is when I sit back and enjoy.
I love this for violence because we got two guys with bad cardio, bad chins. I think Salikov has a better chin historically, but he's 38, which if you guys have ever read Fightnomics, that's the age at which guys' knockout loss rate goes and just shoots up into the air. So I think that his chin is vulnerable. I think that Fialho's chin is vulnerable. I think neither one of them has sellable cardio. So this is a fight that's probably going to be either an extremely greasy, sloppy, shitty 15-minute decision, or somebody's going to die in the first 2 rounds. I'm going to take my chances on somebody getting clipped in those first 2 rounds. Last fight of the night to break down, guys, if you have time, thoughts, or anything to say about Jack Della, because he's the talk of the town this week. He's the biggest favorite on the fight card by quite some margin. I just think that this is the kind of fight that's a setup. I felt like it was a setup from the outset. It's not to say Danny can't win. He's got big power himself. He's got good enough submissions. Jack has seemed a little bit vulnerable in the submission game. But outside of that, I don't see why Jack would lose this fight. He hits harder. I think that he could take a better shot than Danny can take. And Danny he's been 5-7, I think, in the UFC. If I'm wrong, it's 7-5. I switched those around. But either way, he's like basically a 500 fighter. If he loses this way, he's like a 500 fighter in the UFC. That's what he projects to me as. He just lost to Grandpa Trinaldo, right? He's losing to guys that are at his age cohort and above at welterweight that are former lightweights. Come on. You can't be doing that. And especially expecting to keep your job. So he almost got knocked out by Francisco Trinaldo. I think that this is an even worse matchup. I think Jack Della hits very hard. I think he can mix it up with shots to the body. I think if he gets his grappling game going offensively, he could submit somebody like Danny Roberts as well, because I think the club and sub is going to be live. A lot of times, guys don't have good killer instinct against Danny Roberts. He gets hurt really bad and they can't finish him. I don't think we're going to see that tonight. So I prefer the Jack Della side, but I think either way, somebody's getting finished. Prefer violence to just Jack violence if I had a choice. Gordo, what do you think about this one, man?
Yeah, this looks like they're just trying to get Della back on the Perth card. I think they're trying to get him a nice big win here and put him back on that card, win some money there. So I think it's a spot where he's being set up. I've tried to fade Della in the past. I took a Meave last time. Bad look. I'll live with that loss. But this looks like a stylistic, much better matchup for Della. And you know what? It's hard to say he looks like he could be a minus 600 favorite on paper, but he has all the tools to do so. I think a first-round finish will not be out of the equation. He's got power, great technicality, and great finishing ability as well. So violence was actually something I was looking at for the lock of the night play, but ended up just playing a little bit of jackets out of distance in a parlay. Just have some fun with it. But no strong reads here. I think Della lives up to that hopeful matchmaking here.
I like it. The one thing I also thought about was a slightly interesting hedge was either guy by sub was like plus 800. I think Jack by sub is like plus 950. Most of the time, this fight probably ends by knockout, but if Danny Roberts has a brain, he's probably going to try and shoot, implement takedowns, like try and mix up the game on him a little bit. We just saw Jack had to fight out of 2 chokes in his recent UFC bouts. So I think all that is at least an interesting angle. Last week, I wasn't super bullish on either side getting the sub, but I just thought Whaley and Carlo would be grappling so much that the sub plus 700 was potentially value there. So these are the kind of things I think about. If both sides might implement grappling, maybe I look at that ends by sub if it's over 5-1, that kind of deal. Wizz, what do you got here, brother?
Nothing really. Obviously, Jack Della is probably going to win here inside the distance. Just that's not a surprise to anyone. It's not a hot take. I think it's sitting at minus 220 here, and I think that's still value. We saw people betting on Mukaev inside the distance a couple weeks ago at minus 280, 290. I think this deserves to be around that price point. So I think there's still a little bit of meat left on the bone. But am I going to play it myself? Probably not. But yeah, that's the only thing I have here. I just don't rate Danny Roberts right now. A, on durability standpoint, and B, just as a complete striker. So give me Jack Della inside the distance.
I like it. Guys, I have no track bets on this fight card. That's what it came down to. We talked through the fights. We came up with some interesting angles. There may be some fun sprinkles I put out there. I'm probably going to tweet them out as I go, track them on action. But yeah, guys, I don't really have much to offer you guys this week. I feel like it's a weak fight card. I feel like, some of these spots, like I said, there's some live underdogs in my opinion. I think Blade is live. I think that Zalgas is live. I think that there's some guys that could come through, but Derek Lewis, for example, in the main event as well. I'm just not extremely bullish on any of these fighters. I think that taking the week off, nothing wrong with that. Taking the week to be small, think about it, and get back to work. Because, guys, we got great pay-per-views coming up. We've got the Yuri and Glover fight card. I actually think every other fight night that's coming up between now and the end of the year is superior to this week's fight night. So let this one be fun. Let's get some explosive violence. Let's get some crazy outcomes here, and let's get back to work on these major fight cards coming up. So I appreciate you guys all for being here. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. Go ahead and drop a like on this video if you appreciate the content. And if you want to hear more from me, I'm going to be hopping on the Pub Sports Radio live stream very shortly. But I want to say thank you very much to my two guests for coming on today, for making this breakdown so special. My man, Wizz Bets, tell the people where they can find you, brother.
Liam, thanks again for having us. It's always fun. You can find me at Wizz Bets on Twitter and on YouTube. Almost at 100 subscribers, so if you can help me out, really appreciate it. We have a show every Thursday that interviews your favorite MMA Twitter personalities and fighters, so don't miss it.
79 of you in here. That means we could easily get him over 100. Guys, go help out my man Wizz, putting out a lot of great content for the people, always doing his damnedest. So appreciate you for being here, brother. And make sure you guys go show love and support, as well as the Plays and Fades YouTube channel and my brother, Gordo Gambles. Gordo, tell the people where they can find you.
As they're announcing the fighters here, that's where you can find me. Plays and Fade Sports on YouTube, Gordo Gambles on Twitter. Good luck, guys. Let's make some money. And to the Americans watching this, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much, my brother. God bless you all. Good luck with all your betting action. Enjoy those fights. Come back next week. We're going to have all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody. Take care.